Welcome back to another season of Artist to Artist presented by Artist Republic. You might notice some changes around here, and that's for good reason. We wanted to hit the ground running in 2021 with a brand new approach to the podcast. First things first, we have a whole new logo and branding. You probably noticed that our cover photo was different along with a new style for our cover images. We're really diving deep at making this podcast the best it can be for you. Our goal with the podcast is to provide a free resource for artists everywhere to help them learn and navigate the complications of this industry. Part of the goal for this year is to also change our overall format of the podcast. Instead of doing a quick intro, we've decided to take our time, talk about some important things happening in the music industry, and then bring our guest on. We will be doing a mid-interview segment that covers a variety of topics. From the lightning round questions to reviewing your music, it's going to be really fun, and we cannot wait to show you what we've got cooking. But speaking of reviewing your music, if you want us to listen to your track live on air and give you honest feedback, hit us up on Patreon and become a patron today. We offer 3 choices to help you get more involved with our podcast. One of the options is submitting your music, but we also have cool rewards such as merchandise, joining us on the podcast, in the audience, and more. It's seriously really cool, and we would love to have you join us there. Head over to patreon.com/artist2artist podcast. As always, please give us a 5-star rating wherever you go and get your podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Now that we've got that all in, it's time to introduce our first guest of season 2. She is one of the most multi-dimensional artists around. She is a musical Wonder Woman who writes and produces her own music while being deeply involved with all aspects of her career. From designing album covers to directing award-winning music videos, she has been nominated for the 2020 Best Reggae Recording of the Year, the 2020 winner of the Best R&B and Soul Album, and the winner of the Best Debut Album of the Year at the Independent Music Awards in NYC. This artist has art that is raw and honest to max. Please help us introduce Storry.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. We want to learn about you, and we want the audience to kind of figure out who you are before we get into some more deeper questions.
Okay. Well, I'm a singer-songwriter, but I would say I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I do visual art. I've directed. I did a clay animation. So I just like creating. And I've lived a pretty extraordinary life. So all of the art that I create is generally from my own experience. And I try to do a lot of storytelling.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's one of the most important things, in my opinion, is being able to tell a story with your art. My experience comes in the photography, cinematography realm of things. And I have always loved the visual arts, and I have in the last few years kind of found that it's really important to be able to tell a story. So I guess kind of talk to us about how you go about telling your stories, whether that be through your music, through the art associated with the music, whatever. Like, what's your process?
I generally like to do a lot of journaling. Yeah, for sure. It's like, where do I start?
Yeah.
I do a lot of journaling. I do a lot of free writing. And so if we're talking about songwriting in specific, I just kind of go through the motions, and I don't try to make anything that's a song, or even poetry, just what I feel. And then sometimes I come up with like 2 or 3 pages that I'm like, oh, this has a particular feeling, and I feel like this kind of song could come out of it. So I'll get together with maybe one of my instrumentalist friends, my buddy Tom, who I work a lot with. He's a classical pianist, and we just sit together, and I'd be like, okay, this is the kind of idea I have for this concept. And then he'll start playing some things, and I'll put my voice recorder on. And then I'll just start jamming with him and pulling words off the page, and whether they make sense or not, and then kind of like formulate it after that. And I feel like I've had a lot of songs, like 2 of my songs off my debut album were written entirely that way. Like I had to relearn the voice memo that I had captured because it was just so magical. It was like this antenna, like I was just kind of transferring information. And I think artists, when they're tapping into something really special, it is coming from a universal kind of consciousness. I don't know. I'm a little bit woo-woo, so.
Oh, I love that. It's great. Yeah, it's a really cool approach in my opinion. You know, I'm really into like the fine art of anything really. And like I don't know like how to explain it, but you know, when you talk about music in general, right? You know, you think about, you know, there's like hip hop artists, there's rap artists, there's all of these different genres, and you know, it ebbs and flows, and like, you know, you can tell that some music isn't produced with as much quality and intention as it could. Um, and I think when we talk about you and your music and your art in general, I think about it as like a fine approach to art, if that makes sense. You know, there's like fine arts and then there's, you know, like general arts. And the way that
Mhm.
you approach things feels to me like a fine artist's approach, if that makes sense. And I just love
Thank
that. I don't know. I
you.
just wanted to make a comment on that because I think that's really cool.
I really, really appreciate that. I have been honing my craft my whole life. So even though singing came quite easily to me, um, growing up, like I was able to sing on pitch since I was like 3, but I've still really studied my craft, and like I did all different genres of music. I was in like R&B, and then I was in pop, and then I was in rock, and then I was in a gospel choir, and then I studied opera, and then I went to Jamaica and did reggae. And so I've kind of just like accumulated all of this information from the world. And so I have so much to pull from. And also, because my life has been all over the place, I've been able to pull from different emotions as well. And so people feel that when you're authentic and you're not trying, because I don't try to fit in a box. I'm not trying to, like, I often say that my music is genreless, um, in the sense that, like, it's just free. You know, I'm making art that expresses what I need to express in a larger form. Um, that's why I like albums. I know they're not really consumed anymore in the same way, but both of my records that I put out in 2020, Interlude 19 and Chapter 3, The Come Up, they both are meant to be listened to top down in that order. You know, I put a lot of thought and energy into the concept and the story in a larger form, as well in the smaller forms of being songs.
That's really cool.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think there's a difference between when someone crafts an album and they actually like craft an album. And it's like how the songs are actually positioned makes sense. And it goes into the overall story. But there is one piece of story of like creating art as a story and telling your story, which I like your approach to it. But that I want to go back to because there's one piece of the music that I don't think we've ever even talked about on this podcast, which is, you know, the cover art. I think cover art is something that people overlook a lot. And so my question for you is, as someone that, you know, sees the fine arts and physical arts and also musical arts, how do you craft your cover art and that one picture to tell a story that matches the same kind of story you're trying to tell through your music?
Mm. Yeah, it's not, it definitely is an art. I would say that I'm happier with my second album's cover art than I am with the first one. So I'm getting better, you know. And then I actually did a painting for another artist, for one of his songs, um, that I am really happy about. So now it's gotten me thinking to paint for my own
Yeah.
artwork as well. But yeah, for me it's a similar process in the sense of like allowing it to come freely, allowing it to kind of come to me as opposed to forcing it. Like I'll just try, I'll play around, I'll look at images and I'll just kind of let my intuition be like, okay, like no, I really like this image, and then I'll take a few of them and then I'll start doodling on them on my like graphics pad. And generally it's always my first idea that I end up going with, even though sometimes I'll make like 4 or 5 versions or 10
Yeah.
versions. It always seems to be the first thing that I do that I end up gravitating towards.
Mhm.
Similarly with songs, which is why when somebody sends me an instrumental, for instance, to write to, I always make sure that before I listen to the instrumental that I have my voice memo ready. I'm in a quiet room and I can just sing to my heart's content on it, because my first feeling of hearing that rhythm is usually the thing that I'm like, oh, that's fire. Like, I want to make a song out of that.
And that's a good point too. And we've talked about that before, is like artists spending too much time chasing perfection when they should just be following what the art is. And like, I just had this conversation the other day with I was talking to this investment firm, and they were just picking my mind about stuff. And they were like, how do you see the world of, AI music creation? And I'm like, nowhere. It's not going to work. Like, you can sell me on all this stuff about how you have this bot that can create a song. Great, cool. But guess what? As a industry and as a consumer base and as listeners, people like the raw sound. They like music is an art. You wouldn't create, like, it's cool. Like, someone could create a bot that can paint Van Gogh. Cool. But you ain't going to buy it. Like, you're not going to buy it for the same price that you bought a Van Gogh painting for. And it's the same thing with music. Is like, I think people really need to embrace exactly what you said, is like, go with your first thought and go with that first thing that really, there's a reason your body and your mind, everything went with that direction. So take that, go with it. Don't overthink it. Don't over perfect it. And then just, if it's raw, and just put it out and see what happens.
Exactly. I mean, I was chasing perfection at one point. I had this idea of what my album was going to be, my first debut album. Everyone told me it's like the most important thing. It's got to hit. If it doesn't hit, this is going to happen to you, and you're going to be boxed in, and your life's basically over. And so I was so like trying to make it this perfect thing, and trying to find the perfect producer, and get a good budget in, and get the right team. And I just couldn't, I just didn't have the facilities to do all the things that I wanted to do in the most perfect, quote unquote, way. And the thing that came to mind was this term, progress over perfection. And if you're always looking for this thing to be perfect, it's never going to be that, especially if as artists, we're the ones judging it. You can't judge your art. And when I realized that, and I also realized the fact that that I was an antennae, that I wasn't, like, the art wasn't really mine, and that in order to complete the cycle of creating art, I needed to share it, that only 50% of art is the making of it, and the other 50% is how it actually impacts the listener or the viewer. And that's what makes art. I realized that I had to put it out, and that I couldn't be the judge of it. So I try to encourage a lot of people, just think progress over perfection, make art, put it out, don't judge it, and keep going.
Love that. That's a really beautiful way of saying it, and I appreciate it. But we're about at our 15-minute point, so I want to jump into this new thing that we're doing. And for the audience, this is completely new to them. So this is what we're going to call our random scenario segment, right? Basically, what we're going to do here is we're going to talk to you about a few random scenarios that we have. And we just want you to let us know how you would go about whatever the scenario happens to be. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. All right. So what would you do if a label were to come to you and offer you, in your opinion, a less than satisfactory deal?
I probably wouldn't take it.
Okay.
I would try to maybe negotiate. I'm like, because I'm a believer of, progress over perfection, and maybe it's not the perfect thing, but if it can get me to the next point where I can, share my music with more people, then it would be a discussion definitely to be had. But I have not taken deals before, so this wouldn't be like a new thing for me. However, yeah, I think I would still have a discussion, because I'm not like this person who's like, no, I must be indie forever.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's actually a quick pause, Christian. That's something that is loud and clear to everybody listening. just because you decline your first offer does not mean that's your last offer you'll ever get. I think people think so apparently like, oh my God, if I turn down this offer, I'm never going to get an offer again. Look, point in truth. There have been people that have declined offers and gotten more offers. So no, it's not your only offer. If you don't like it, don't take it.
Well, and
Exactly.
if I can quickly sidebar that too, it's like if you can learn how to say no, you actually become more of an asset to whoever's trying to
Yes.
get you to say yes, because you make yourself
Yes.
less available to them, and then they're going to come back with an even better offer 95% of the time.
Yes.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean to like necessarily you have to play games or anything, but just knowing your worth.
Right.
You
Know
know?
your worth. Exactly. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Let's get into this next scenario. That was really good little talking point. All right, so let's say that you get offered to play a show, but the caveat is that you have to fly yourself out to it. What would you do?
I would do it.
You would do it.
I would do it because right now I just want to perform so much that as long as I broke even, I would do it. Like if it didn't cost me money, but if I even just made a bit of money so I could like, feed myself and like pay my band or whatever it is that I needed to do and it broke even with the flights, then I would do it at this point because I just really want to perform.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the case with a lot of artists right now. Especially it's, no one's able to freaking perform right now. It's probably killing the ones that get their adrenaline and their rush from that stage presence.
Exactly. And not just that, but like also our income. Like for me,
That
I
too.
went on a tour where like basically I wasn't getting paid a lot. It was just paying for my Airbnbs, but I was able to sell merch, and that was my main source of income. Like people were buying merch. So if I can get to a show and have people in front of me, then that's also another stream of income that's really important. And I think a lot of artists that are like indie and just starting out that don't have merch, y'all need to have some merch. Like do it because that is your like biggest source of income when you're starting out, especially.
Absolutely. And, we've talked about before, the fans and the super fans and things like that. And if you have merch, those super fans are going to buy it no matter what, because they want that. They want to be a part of that movement, that, underground indie revolution that's happening just with this one artist. All right, I've got one more question for you. This one's probably a bit easier. It might be a little obvious, but let's say you're walking around, maybe you're at the grocery store or something, and all of a sudden you just get inspiration for a song. What do you do to make sure that you don't forget it?
I'll just take out my voice memo and hum a little thing into it, write in my notes some lyric ideas potentially. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I kind of figured that would be the answer. I just wanted to see what you would say, because that's what I do. I don't know what other people do. But I think that could wrap up that little segment. I don't think any of the other questions I had written down are applicable here. So, Nick, do you have anything that you wanted to kind of start this last open forum with?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to start with my last kind of question, my last, kind of area of time, would be, how do you build, because you mentioned merchandising, and that's a very important thing. And this is something, I think, we're definitely getting into with other people, but, how do you as an artist diversify yourself to make sure that you have multiple streams of revenue? Because I know, I'm being a distribution company, I see what people get paid for royalties. It ain't anything. I mean, 5,000 streams is like $7. So the reality is you can't live on that. So how do you, as an artist, what are you doing to diversify different revenue sources to make yourself comfortable and be able to live as a music artist?
So personally, I'm still not at the point where I feel I've made a full-time living off my music. Like, um, I would say I'm pretty close, but I'm not quite where I feel like I'd be comfortable. And so I think that diversification takes time. Everybody is always like, well, you need to have all these things. And then you feel like you have to have them all now. And it's very overwhelming. And so then you
Yeah.
end up not doing any of the things. And that's just going to debilitate you. So I say to just do one thing at a time. One thing is to make sure that you're collecting emails, because creating an email list is a way to like continuously contact your people, um, so that you can give them new things, you can develop a relationship with them, and then you can inevitably have them support you by purchasing merchandise or purchasing experiences or whatever it is. So that's the first thing. Then the next thing I would say is to get something like a Patreon site, which doesn't take much time. Like it will take you a day or two to put together. And it's like residual income in the background. You might not have a lot of followers at the beginning, but it won't be too time consuming. You can literally have a tier that's just $2 that people just get like exclusive content, and you give them stuff earlier than you would give the rest of your peoples. Um, the next one would be, if you can find a booking agent that would be interested in working with you. That has been my savior for this year, because I was able to get on a lot of like online streaming festivals that paid me pretty well. So that is a great way to do things. Also, if you're doing your own live streams, to create a PayPal account thing, it's super easy. Like you just basically have a tip jar, like a virtual tip jar on your live streams, and people can tip you. And generally people are very generous. You have to think about your music as the advertisement. It's not really the thing that you're making money off of. Yes, some people make money off lots of streams. I personally don't. So I have to find other means of getting that until my streams get up. So that's another way of doing it. I mean, there's so many different ways. Like I also paint, so I'm selling paintings. Like I just do a bunch of different things if I can write for other people. And, there's just a lot of different ways, giving singing lessons, like, like you just have to be creative as you are on your art. You have to be creative with your marketing in the way that you're like making income, because it doesn't come from just one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for lack of a better term, it's all about the hustle. And I always like to say it, people look at music artists as music artists, right? But they don't really think about the fact that you're basically a freelance artist, right? You're doing all of these different things to make money for the thing that you love. And as long as you're happy and you're doing what you love, that's all that really matters, in my opinion. Um, Moving on though, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was these two concept albums that you released last year. So you got the Come Up released in February of last year, and then Interlude 19 on September 5th, which I believe is your birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us a little bit about those. I guess we can start with the Come Up, since that one came first.
Sure. So I basically wrote an album about a woman trying to leave the sex industry and get into the music industry, only to realize that both are equally misogynistic and problematic. And she grapples with her relationship with her mother, her friends, her romantic relationships, her career, and with money. And that is coming from a person that has experienced all of that. I had been in a very abusive relationship. Someone who guised themselves as being a producer and turned out to be a pimp and put me in a strip club, and took all my money for a very long time. And I got out of that and thinking that I was going to find this beautiful release in this new world of opportunity, only to find myself in very similar situations of exploitation in the music industry. And it was very disheartening. And so the reason I call the album Chapter 3 The Come Up is because I actually wrote Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 already, that were kind of about me getting into that industry and stuff. And but Chapter 3 just felt like that's kind of where I was at the moment, and it felt the most authentic to release it first. So so I put out Chapter 3 in February, and then not even 30 days after my release, I had just gotten off tour. I was about to go to the Junos like I literally that morning had my bags packed. I was going to the airport and I got the news that they were canceled and the world shut down because of COVID. So you can imagine, like, mm, the wind was knocked out of my sails and I was pretty depressed. So I decided to create a new album with virtual collaborations called Interlude 19. And the concept behind Interlude 19 was that I imagined this time that we're living in to be like a short blip, an interlude in our lives that separate two parts. And that's the definition of an interlude. And so I wanted to make all the songs short, and they're between 45 seconds and 3 minutes long. And just like about waiting and about, the kinds of things that go on in your head when you're alone in your house. So yeah.
That's absolutely fantastic. And, first I just want to say you have to be like one of the strongest people on the planet to have to go through all of that stuff and then still sit here, smile, and just be hype about all of your music. So I just want you to know, like, I totally like applaud you for that. Like, that's incredible, and you're
Thank
incredible.
you.
But
I think going
yeah,
off
go
that
ahead. Go ahead.
quick thing, just like dive in. It's sad because I was actually on I've been embracing Clubhouse this week, and that's like my thing. And I was talking on there because there was a mom that was on there and was like asking for advice from other music people about her daughter that's getting in the music industry. And she was asking about all this stuff, like what's the difference between like these types of deals, all this stuff. And I'm like, first off, if you're getting a deal before you have traction, it's probably not actually a deal. And second thing, going off of that, there are two types of people in the music industry. People that you think will help you eat, but really you're just helping them eat. And then there's people that actually have eaten and are like, okay, now I'm ready to help other people eat. And I think that's a really, like, people don't talk about that in the music industry. Like, people don't talk about this massive underbelly of the music industry that just no one realizes. And it's really on the bottom level of that, bottom 1/3 of the music industry where, it's not, yes, the Sonys and all those big companies, yes, they still do some crazy stuff. But, it's really that mid-level industry that's just so, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just grimy and it's just crazy. And I think it's awesome to be able to bring that to light, because I think we do as an industry need to bring that to light. Just like over the past 2 years, we've been really bringing to light, like, the fact that, like, there's a lot of problems with mental health in the music industry and no one brings that to light. And I think people don't bring to light really how screwed up the music industry is. And I feel like it's one of those things that no one wants to touch. And so
because
we
idolize all the people in there, right? Those people are our gods. You think about Queen Bee and Jay-Z, and you're like, oh my God, I love these people. They have to be perfect. They have to be in a perfect world.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a conversation that, like, the world needs to have, of like, hey, the industry that you idolize is not what you think it is. Like, maybe the 1% that you see is great and happy-go-lucky and oh my gosh, but the 99% of it is really bad. And there's a lot of people out there that are not, getting and doing what they should be doing and getting out of it what they should be getting out of it, and making sacrifices that don't need to be made, and getting in positions that are just not okay. And yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say on that, because I think that's awesome, bringing up that kind of conversation side of it and really bringing it to light. So I definitely thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, of course. Well, I do believe that there needs to be some form of regulation in the music industry, just they've kind of placed certain things after the Me Too movement in the film industry. They've made a lot of changes in their structure and how they shoot certain things, and the regulations behind sets now. And I think that's really important. And we don't have that in studios and in music spaces. It's still kind of the Wild West.
Yeah.
And I would say I've met people in the top tiers of the music industry, some people who are my idols, and they also some of them are not. Some of them are great people, and some of them are really not, and they are kind of fucked up. And I think that's because of the lack of regulation. And there's a lot of ego as well in the industry.
Right.
So it's a very egocentric industry. And because of that, you can get all kinds of kind of crazy characters. So the thing that pushes me is not really that side of it, because I don't really want, in my heart of hearts, I don't want to be involved in such a world. Like I want to be in a peaceful, balanced place and doing good things for people. But what pushes me is my why. And my why is so strong that that's what's helped me get through all the crap and made me, even when I can't get out of bed some days, I go, no, you have to get out of bed, because you can change the lives of other people and other women, and, and help them. And that's what's really motivated me. And so I tell people, have a clear why. Your why shouldn't be because I want lots of money and to have everybody know my name. Like, okay, that's a perk. We all have ego. We'd love everyone to love us, but you have a stronger why. Know why you're doing it.
Absolutely.
And I think going off of that too, like kind of my last thing I'll say before passing it back to you, Christian, is, there was a interesting video that I was watching. I forget who it was. I feel like it was Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know. So I'll give the credit to him for the thing it was. But he was saying, he's like, I'm tired of people faking, like flexing fake money, acting like they're rich and really having like $1 in the bank account. He goes, life would be so much easier if we just had a number on our forehead that showed like, how much money do you have in your bank? So you can't fake it anymore with, buying, like, don't buy an $800, Gucci belt to act like you have money. But I think that's the same thing we need in the music industry, is like, we created a thing on Artist Republic that's going to be mattering more over the next couple of years called your rep score. And it's basically an algorithm that calculates how legit you are. Like, imagine if everyone in the music industry just walked around with that tattooed on their face. Like, look, I'm a rep score 89. Like, okay, cool. I'm actually like, I've had a good reputation. But like, then like people can actually walk around and it's like, it's not about ego anymore. Like, because there is so much ego and there's so much non-clarity in the music industry. Cause it's like my brother's nephew, sister's dog walker's uncle knows a guy who knows a guy that can get you a show at this bar. And it's like, you don't know.
I think that this number thing though is a terrible idea. Have you seen Black Mirror?
Oh yeah.
I have not. I'm definitely afraid to watch Black Mirror because I don't want to know.
You have to watch it because you have to, because what you just said is a terrible idea. I think this rep score thing is horrible. It's going to destroy people. Because the thing is like ego will always be attached to things unless we have to physically, like mentally, spiritually let go of our ego. Like intentionally. It doesn't just go away. Once we have this now number, then that will become part of our ego. And it's not real. The thing with these numbers is that they're not real. They're not real indications of your actual success in life. Numbers do lie. People like to say that they don't lie all the time, but they do. I understand why they're trying to create this rep score, because it's trying to show the actual engagement levels as opposed to people who are buying their numbers, which can then skew, people are buying numbers for vanity, really, and to make people believe that they have more clout than they do. But the thing is that when people look at my Instagram and they see that I only have 7,000 followers, then they think that I'm less credible. And it's just human nature now, because that's how we gauge people's value.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, it's crazy. I had people would not respond to my DMs, and then I had 10K and now people respond to me all the time. And like one of my buddies has a verified check mark and he gets 10 times the amount of people that respond to him than I get. Just because he has a check mark. There's no difference between me and him. He just
and my friend has told me how these blue check marks work, and it's also a very skewed thing.
Oh, so. It's so skewed. So skewed. Oh yeah, it's nuts. I mean, we're definitely getting down a wormhole, but like I'll say that like Facebook verification literally is just how much money you spend on Facebook ads. The more you spend on Facebook ads, you then get this magic person that comes out of the woodworks like, hey, I'll be your Facebook rep. And then they're like, oh, hey, what do you need? And you're like, oh, I need to get verified. They're like, okay. And it's like, oh, okay. So basically all I had to do was spend a crap ton of money to get this magical person that if you email them and ask them to get them, they say that program doesn't exist. And then you get that person once you spend enough money, and it's just, it's all BS. That's where I'll leave it.
So, as a synopsis there, the music industry is fucked. There's a lot of change that needs to happen for sure. In many cases, it's sad that we have to have this conversation, but it's good that we are.
Yes.
And, Storry, I just want to say before we let you go, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to come and speak to us. You are so well-spoken. You have such a great drive and motivation behind you. And we're definitely going to, keep checking in on you to see where you're at in your career. And, we're just very blessed to have had you on our podcast. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. I had such a good time, and y'all are good spirits. So definitely stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great way to kick off season 2.
Absolutely. All right. So we're going to do our little outro here, and then we'll be done. So Nick, take it away.
This is my favorite cue that I haven't gotten to do in weeks. Well, everybody, that was another great podcast. Don't forget, if you did like this podcast, you can leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast or Patreon or really anything. You can leave it on Google. You can leave it on podcastrating.com. There's so many ways you can rate us. But here's the kicker. If you do rate us, because it is the first episode of season 2, it is a super, super special time for Christian. And if you do rate us on Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star rating, Christian will personally fly to you and hand you hand-knitted Artist Republic, artist to artist masks to protect you from the COVID, while also giving you a hand-knitted present from Christian himself. So give us a 5-star rating, and you may or may not get a personal visit from Christian with a hand-knitted artist to artist mask, which, disclaimer, Christian's never knitted before, so there may be blood on it, or maybe yeah. So with that, give us a 5-star rating. We will see you next week.
Baby, you got me. I'm full of pride, but baby, you gon' see. You're just what I like. Touching, kiss up on me softly. High signs that keep me up like coffee. This is so good, feel like a doge. Everybody looking like all these other men that serve a high life. Promises like how they put it down right. My girl, she fuck me better than any of these guys. Baby, you got me. I'm full of pride, but baby, you gon' see. It's just what I like. Can't wait for no one but you. Can't stay with